The psychological landscape of a man who feels his relationship slipping away is one of quiet desperation and intense, focused energy. When a man is truly terrified of losing you, his behavior shifts from the relaxed, authentic rhythm of a secure partner into a state of hyperperformance. This transition is rarely loud or confrontational. Instead, it manifests as a series of calculated attempts to win you back every single day, often before you have even consciously decided to leave. This phenomenon is rooted in a deep-seated survival instinct. In his mind, the relationship is no longer just a source of companionship. It has become a benchmark of his personal worth and stability. When that benchmark is threatened, his subconscious triggers a fight-or-flight response. But instead of fleeing, he fights to become the most indispensable, impressive, and flawless version of himself imaginable. Understanding this behavior requires peeling back the layers of traditional masculinity and ego. For many men, the fear of abandonment is masked by a need to provide, protect, or succeed. If he senses that his value in your eyes is diminishing, he will naturally gravitate toward the traits he believes make a man worthy of staying: competence, physical attraction, material generosity, and emotional resilience. However, because these actions are born from a place of high-level anxiety rather than organic growth, they often feel weighted or slightly out of sync with the natural flow of the relationship. He isn't just being a good partner. He is performing the role of a hero in a story where he fears the ending has already been written. He becomes a student of your preferences, a shadow to your needs, and a relentless architect of a future that he is terrified he won't be a part of. This state of impressing out of fear creates a complex paradox. On the surface, you are receiving the best version of him, the most attentive, the most driven, and the most romantic. Yet, beneath that surface, there's a frantic energy that can feel suffocating or disingenuous. He is trying to build a fortress around the relationship using grand gestures, perfectionism, and constant validation as his bricks and mortar. He believes that if he can just be enough, if he can solve every problem, look perfect in every photo, and agree with every opinion, you will find it impossible to walk away. He is essentially trying to over-engineer love, forgetting that true intimacy thrives in the messy, unpolished spaces where two people feel safe enough to be flawed. Recognizing these 15 signs is crucial because it allows you to see the vulnerability hiding behind the bravado. When a man tries to impress you because he is scared, he isn't just showing off. He is pleading for his place in your life. He is using every tool in his psychological arsenal to prove that he is worth the investment, often sacrificing his own peace of mind to ensure your satisfaction. By identifying these behaviors, you gain a clearer picture of the emotional stakes involved, allowing you to address the underlying insecurity before the weight of his performance leads to a total collapse of the authentic connection you once shared. 1. The perfectionist facade. When a man is gripped by the fear of losing you, his first instinct is often to eliminate any perceived flaws that might give you a reason to leave. This perfectionist facade is an exhaustive attempt to curate a version of himself that feels indispensable and beyond reproach. He becomes hyper-aware of his tone, his manners, and his contributions to the relationship, acting as though he is on a permanent first date. You might notice that he stops sharing his frustrations or hides his bad days because he views any sign of weakness or negativity as a potential crack in the foundation that could lead to a collapse. This behavior is driven by the subconscious belief that if he can just be perfect enough, he creates a safety net where rejection becomes impossible. He may suddenly start agreeing with every opinion you have or anticipating your needs before you even voice them, not necessarily out of organic growth, but out of a desperate need to maintain a flawless image. This internal pressure often leads to a visible stiffness. He is so focused on not making a mistake that he loses the ability to be spontaneous. He treats the relationship like a high-stakes performance where one wrong move could end the show, leading him to over-polish his personality until the authentic, messy human elements of his character are completely tucked away behind a shield of calculated excellence. 2. Calculated grand gestures. While romance is a natural part of a healthy bond, A man terrified of losing you will often weaponize calculated grand gestures to re-establish his value in your life. These aren't just simple acts of kindness. They are high-impact, high-visibility events designed to create a wow factor that drowns out any doubts you might be harboring. He might surprise you with an expensive trip, an elaborate gift, or a public declaration of his feelings that feels slightly out of proportion with the current state of the relationship. The calculation comes from the underlying intent. He is trying to buy emotional insurance. By creating these peak experiences, he hopes to build a reservoir of goodwill that he can lean on if things get rocky. If he senses you pulling away, these gestures increase in frequency and intensity. It is a psychological tactic intended to make it harder for you to leave because of the sheer weight of the investment he is making. He wants to remind you, and perhaps convince himself, of how much he is willing to do, using these grand moments to distract from deeper, unresolved issues or the insecurity that is actually driving his behavior. He is trying to create a highlight reel so bright that you forget the shadows of doubt that were making him anxious in the first place. 3. Overcommunication and instant replies. When the fear of abandonment sets in, silence becomes the enemy. A man in this state begins to view a slow text response or an hour of radio silence as a sign that your interest is waning. To combat this, he pivots into a mode of overcommunication, where he becomes the fastest responder you've ever known. He will reply to your messages within seconds, regardless of how busy he is, as a way to demonstrate his total availability and devotion. This isn't just about being polite, it's a strategy to keep the digital tether between you as tight as possible. He may start sending check-in texts throughout the day, sharing mundane details of his life just to keep the conversation flowing. The goal is to occupy as much of your mental space as possible, ensuring that he is always at the forefront of your mind. If the conversation lulls, he will quickly pivot to a new topic or ask a question to force a response, terrified that a gap in communication is a gap where someone else could step in or where you might realize you're fine without him. This constant digital presence acts as a security blanket for his anxiety, providing him with immediate, bite-sized hits of validation every time he sees those typing bubbles appear on his screen. 4. Intense interest in your future plans. Anxiety about the future often manifests as a sudden, intense curiosity about your long-term trajectory. A man who is terrified of losing you will start asking pointed questions about where you see yourself in 5 years, your career goals, or your thoughts on relocation. While these are standard relationship milestones, the tone here is different. It feels like an interrogation masked as interest. He is looking for hooks where he can attach his own future to yours. If you mention a desire to move to a new city, he will immediately research jobs there or talk about how much he's always loved that area. He is trying to weave his narrative into yours so tightly that extracting himself becomes a logistical and emotional nightmare. This hyper-focus on the future serves as a diagnostic tool for him. He is listening for any plan you have that doesn't explicitly include him, so he can course-correct and prove why he belongs in that vision. By showing an overwhelming interest in your dreams, he positions himself as your biggest cheerleader, making it feel like losing him would mean losing the one person who truly gets your vision. It is a preemptive strike against being left behind as your life evolves. 5. Hypervigilance toward your mood shifts. One of the most telling signs of a man operating out of fear is an almost supernatural sensitivity to your emotional state. This hypervigilance means he is constantly scanning your face, your tone of voice, and even your body language for the slightest hint of dissatisfaction. If your hello sounds a fraction flatter than usual, or if you seem slightly distracted during dinner, his internal alarm system goes off. He will repeatedly ask, "Is everything okay?" or "Are you mad at me?" even when there is no reason to think so. This behavior stems from the belief that if he can catch a problem in its absolute infancy, he can fix it before it grows into a reason for a breakup. He becomes an emotional chameleon, shifting his personality to soothe whatever he perceives you are feeling. If you seem tired, he becomes the ultimate caregiver. If you seem bored, he becomes the entertainer. This constant monitoring is exhausting for him, but he views it as a necessary defense mechanism. He is so focused on preventing a negative mood that he often stifles the natural ebb and flow of the relationship, creating a pressurized environment where you feel like you have to be on just so he doesn't spiral into an anxious state of overfixing. 6. Seeking constant validation of his worth. When a man is terrified of losing you, his self-esteem becomes entirely tethered to your perception of him. This leads to a relentless pursuit of validation, where he constantly fishes for compliments or reassurance about his role in your life. He might downplay his achievements just to hear you contradict him with praise, or he may ask repetitive questions like, "Do you still find me attractive?" or "Am I the best partner you've had?" This behavior is a desperate attempt to quiet the internal voice telling him he isn't enough to keep you interested. He treats your words like a life raft. Each positive affirmation provides a temporary reprieve from his anxiety. However, because the root of the issue is his own insecurity, the relief is short-lived, leading to a cycle of needing more and more verbal proof of your affection. He becomes hyperfixated on your reactions to his actions, looking for a gold star for even the most basic tasks. This constant need for ego stroking isn't about vanity. It is a diagnostic tool he uses to measure the temperature of the relationship. If the praise stops, he assumes the love is fading, and he will escalate his efforts to impress you just to win back that verbal security. 7. Subtle bragging about personal success. In an effort to remind you of why he is a catch, a man who fears losing you will often resort to highlighting his value through his external accomplishments. This subtle bragging is designed to reinforce the idea that he is a high-status partner with a bright future, making the prospect of leaving him seem like a significant loss for you. He might casually mention a praise-filled email from his boss, an upcoming promotion, or a high-profile social connection he made. While it may come across as arrogance, it is actually driven by a profound fear of being replaceable. He wants to build a mental image in your mind of a man who is successful, competent, and respected by others, hoping that this social proof will act as a barrier against your departure. He is essentially running a continuous marketing campaign for himself. If he feels you are losing interest, the frequency of these status updates increases. He wants you to see him as an asset, someone who brings stability, prestige, and success to the table, so that the logical part of your brain decides that staying with him is the smartest move for your own future. 8. Mimicking your interests and hobbies. A man terrified of being left behind will often try to close the gap between you by becoming your mirror. If you suddenly take up a new interest, such as a specific sport, a niche genre of film, or even a lifestyle change like veganism, he will dive into it with an intensity that often surpasses your own. This isn't just about sharing a life. It's a strategic move to ensure that your worlds are so intertwined that you can't participate in your favorite activities without being reminded of him. He fears that if you have a world just for yourself, you might find happiness there that doesn't involve him, leading to your eventual exit. By mimicking your passions, he creates a shared language and a shared schedule, making himself a constant companion in every facet of your joy. You may notice he starts using your slang, listening to your favorite underground artists, or buying gear for a hobby you only mentioned once. He is trying to become your soulmate by design, crafting a version of himself that is perfectly compatible with your current identity, even if it means sacrificing his own authentic preferences in the process. 9. Extreme defensive kindness. This behavior manifests as an almost aggressive level of niceness that feels impossible to argue with. When a man is scared of losing you, he may become a martyr to your needs, taking on chores, errands, and emotional labor to an extreme degree. This extreme defensive kindness is a way of building a moral high ground. Subconsciously, he believes that if he is the perfect partner who does everything for you, it would be cruel or unjustified for you to leave him. It acts as a preemptive defense against criticism. If you try to bring up an issue, he might point, subtly or overtly, to all the kind things he has been doing lately. He wants to make himself so helpful and so good that the very idea of breaking up with him makes you feel like the villain in the story. This kindness isn't always selfless. It is often a heavy-handed attempt to create a debt of gratitude. He is trying to make himself too good to leave, using acts of service as a shield to deflect any potential conflict or emotional distance he senses growing between you. 10. Frequent recounting of shared memories. When the present feels unstable, A man who is afraid of losing you will constantly retreat into the past. He will frequently bring up the good old days, reminding you of your first date, a funny trip you took, or a moment when you were both deeply in love. By constantly recounting these shared memories, he is attempting to anchor you to the history you've built together. He wants to trigger the nostalgia that makes you forget current frustrations and focus on the emotional investment you've already made. This is a psychological tactic known as sunk cost reinforcement. He is reminding you of how much time and energy has gone into the relationship so that the idea of starting over with someone else feels exhausting and wasteful. He uses these memories as proof that you belong together, acting as a curator of your greatest hits to drown out any current dissatisfaction. Every time he says, "Remember when we," he is actually saying, "Don't forget how good we can be," hoping that the weight of the past is enough to pull you back into a committed future with him. 11. Competitive behavior toward other men. When a man is haunted by the fear of losing you, his internal alarm system treats every other male in your orbit as a potential replacement. This insecurity manifests as a sharp, often subtle, shift into competitive behavior. You might notice him making dismissive comments about your male colleagues, childhood friends, or even random celebrities you admire. He feels a desperate need to outshine anyone who could possibly capture your attention or respect. This isn't just basic jealousy. It is a frantic effort to prove his dominance and superiority in your eyes. He might suddenly start working out harder to improve his physique, or he may try to one-up stories told by other men in social settings. If a friend helps you with a task, he might become visibly upset and insist on doing it better or faster next time. This competition is a defense mechanism designed to remind you that he is the alpha in your life and that no one else can provide the same level of protection, humor, or success. He views the world as a zero-sum game where any admiration you show another man is a direct deduction from his own value. By constantly positioning himself as the superior choice, he hopes to eliminate the possibility of you looking elsewhere, essentially trying to win a race he's running against imaginary rivals to secure his place by your side. 12. Investing heavily in physical appearance. A sudden, intense focus on grooming, wardrobe, and fitness is often a red flag that a man is terrified his attraction capital is running low. When he fears you are losing interest, he reverts to the most basic tool of attraction, the visual. He may start spending significant amounts of money on high-end clothing, change his hairstyle, or spend hours at the gym to achieve a more perfect body. This investing heavily in physical appearance is a tangible way for him to feel he has some control over your desire for him. He believes that if he can become the most visually appealing version of himself, you will be physically locked in and less likely to leave. This behavior often carries a sense of urgency. It isn't a slow lifestyle change, but a rapid transformation fueled by anxiety. He might ask for your opinion on his outfits more frequently, or seek constant reassurance that you still find him handsome. Beneath the vanity lies a deep-seated fear that he is becoming boring or stale to you. By constantly refreshing his look, he is trying to recapture the excitement of the honeymoon phase, hoping that a polished exterior will distract you from any deeper emotional disconnects he feels are threatening the relationship's survival. 13. Overextending financial or material resources. In a desperate bid to remain indispensable, a man who fears losing you might begin to overextend himself financially. He starts treating your relationship like a project that can be saved with enough capital. This includes buying gifts he can't truly afford, paying for every meal, or offering to cover your bills and expenses even when you haven't asked. To him, money and resources are a form of binding energy. He believes that the more he provides for you on a material level, the more costly it becomes for you to leave him. This creates a psychological dynamic where he tries to make your life so comfortable and subsidized that the idea of going back to a single lifestyle, or being with someone less generous, feels like a step backward. This behavior is often unsustainable and can lead to hidden stress or debt, but his immediate fear of abandonment overrides his long-term financial logic. He wants to be your primary provider to the point where his absence would create a tangible vacuum in your daily life. It is a material safety net designed to catch a relationship he feels is slipping through his fingers, using luxury and convenience as a substitute for the emotional security he feels he lacks. 14. Attempting to become your sole problem solver. When a man is terrified of losing his place in your life, he tries to make himself the central hub of your existence. He will go to extreme lengths to handle every problem you face, from a flat tire to a conflict at work. This sole problem solver mentality is a strategic move to create a sense of dependency. He wants you to feel that without him, your world would be significantly more difficult to navigate. If you mention a minor issue, he will drop everything to fix it, often over-delivering on the solution to prove his utility. He may even subtly discourage you from seeking help from friends, family, or professionals, framing himself as the only one who truly has your best interests at heart. This isn't just about being helpful, it's about becoming a necessity. He equates being needed with being safe from rejection. If he can solve all your problems, he believes he has earned a permanent spot in your life. The darkest side of this behavior is that it can become stifling. He may inadvertently strip away your autonomy just so he can feel like the hero who saves the day, using his competence as a shield against the possibility of you realizing you are perfectly capable of thriving on your own. 15. Unprompted promises of long-term change. The final and perhaps most telling sign of a man terrified of losing you is the unprompted promise. Without you even asking, he may suddenly vow to change fundamental parts of his personality or lifestyle that have caused friction in the past. He might promise to quit a bad habit, start therapy, save more money, or become more emotionally open. These aren't gradual shifts. They are Hail Mary declarations intended to reset your expectations and buy more time. He senses that the clock is ticking on the relationship, and he uses these promises as a way to hit the pause button on your potential departure. Because these changes are motivated by fear rather than genuine self-reflection, they are often difficult for him to maintain. He is telling you exactly what he thinks you want to hear to keep you in the room. This behavior creates a cycle of hope and disappointment. He provides a vision of a new and improved version of himself to keep you invested in his potential rather than his current reality. For him, the promise is a survival tactic, a desperate attempt to rewrite the ending of the story before you have a chance to walk away.